this is my review of My Hero Academia. Okay, so this episode of Season 4 Encounters actually introduces us to a whole bunch of characters that'll be important for the next season. But for right now, they're just kind of minor characters. But it does introduce us to a couple of new important characters that we're going to need to know for the next season. So it's definitely going to be an important episode to build on for the next season. So the episode starts off by reintroducing us to Twice, but not as we knew him. More accurately, it's his civilian identity, who never actually gets a name, but he's introduced in kind of an interesting way. So Twice's civilian identity is interesting because it's established early on that he constantly contradicts himself while he's in the costume, but outside the costume, it starts to become a hindrance until he threatens to split himself apart with his own quirk. So that makes him very mentally unhinged. But throughout this entire half of the episode, we're actually introduced to what his philosophy is and what he believes. So as he states, he believes society works a certain way, which is how it's been established. Even though All Might has retired, he believes that society will more or less stay the same as it always has been, with people using their quirks in ways because they don't know how, so they're using their quirks to commit crimes and stuff like that. And case in point, we see a group of thugs using their quirks to rob a bank and escape in a car. We see them later, but they're just kind of little minor characters. We don't see much of them though. So yeah, he believes that the society is more or less going to function the same way it always has been. But he also believes that Endeavor kind of isn't the best person to be leading this charge, which again, is also something we knew. He realizes that Endeavor kind of isn't the right person for the job, and realizes that he probably isn't the right person to be the number one hero, and has kind of been thrust into a position he kind of doesn't really have any business being in, or at least not in the way he wanted. So it also establishes that Twice, like the rest of the League of Villains, has actually been recruiting people to try and incorporate them into the League to grow their numbers. And we actually see a couple of other people trying to recruit people into the League with mixed success. So yeah, it establishes that that's what's going on here. But as he's contemplating what all this means, he actually gets a call from Giran, who we've seen a couple of times at this point. He kind of works for the League, but not really. He recruits new villains for the League, but Giran calls him to let him know how things are going with him, and he says things are going okay, and then immediately contradicts himself. Meanwhile, he talks with Giran about how things are going with him, and the two kind of catch up. But then Giran hangs up after realizing that he kind of caught Twice at a bad time. At which point Twice puts on his mask and is immediately whole, as he puts it. So the way Twice works is that he kind of developed a split personality after using his quirk to push his duplicates around. They eventually got sick of it, and they all killed each other, except for him, and he's not even entirely sure if he's the real Twice. So yeah, it established that he doesn't remember doesn't remember if he's the real Twice or not. All he knows is that all of his clones killed himself, and he may or may not be the original. He's not entirely sure. But sure enough, he also goes out to do some recruiting, and eventually comes across a villain named Overhaul, who we don't really see much of, but he takes down those thugs I told you about earlier. So that should tell you. So he and his crew take down a group of thugs that we studied from earlier in the episode. We're not really informally introduced to the rest of them, but we are introduced to Overhaul, and he's pretty much the only person we meet. Although I should note that they all resemble plague doctors in some way. All of their equipment resembles plague doctor masks. So yeah, they have a very similar appearance and design. They all have costumes based on Plague Doctors, and I'm assuming that's kind of a theme because they're kind of part of the same organization. But anyway, after all that, after we reintroduced twice and how his mind works, we actually transition back to Class 1A and how they're going to the opening ceremony. Sans Deku and Bakugo because they're under house arrest. So yeah, they go to the opening ceremonies, and it's revealed that apparently all of the different classes are going to be working together this year, which is going to be interesting to see. But eventually they do arrive at the opening ceremonies. And Nezu gives them all opening speeches. He tells them all his thoughts about how he hasn't been getting much sleep because of the problems that have been plaguing him as of late. Like, we already know what the problems are, so I'm not going to go into them here, but we already know but as he puts it, the society is changing. All Might is retired. Every society's going to change, and he points out that they probably shouldn't have put all their eggs in one basket with All Might. So, but also while he's giving his opening speech, he also offhand mentions hero work studies, which are going into more detail later in the episode, and also everybody knows that Deku and Bakugo fought now. But in any case, everybody is informed of what's going on, and we're also informally introduced to Mirio Togata, a student who we find out is later a member of the Big Three, which is basically he's the cream of the crop. He's one of the 3 most prominent students in UA. He's at the top of the food chain with 2 other students who we aren't introduced to, but it is later revealed that he's part of the Big Three and has a powerful quirk to boot. Sure enough, he finds out that the students they were talking about that started the fight were from Class 1A, and he goes to meet them formally or informally, I guess, using his quirk, which is revealed to gives him the ability to walk through walls, I guess. It's never explained what his quirk is, but I can assume it's his ability. It gives him an ability to walk through walls based on how we see him interact with Deku. But anyway, everybody gets back to their dorms. They explain what they went over in class, or at least to each other. They've been told not to explain anything to Deku or Bakugo, but Deku is able to pick up on stuff from what they're not telling him, which is that they did go over the work studies stuff, and it's very similar to what their internships were, only for this time it's for real. So, yeah, Deku quickly realizes he's going to fall behind and realizes that he's going to need to catch up a lot after the 3 days are up. So, and yeah, sure enough, he does exactly that when he gets back to class. But in the meantime, he's taking out the trash, and he encounters Mirio and is completely confused as to who or what he is. And Mirio points out that the main reason he showed up was so that he could see Deku firsthand and see just who exactly everybody's been talking about. Sure enough, Deku is a little bit confused, but he feels like he knows Mirio from somewhere. Case in point, when he gets back to class and after giving a written apology to Aizawa and after profusely apologizing to the Class 1A, but specifically Ida, because he's kind of the class rep and he feels like he let him down. He takes a seat, at which point Aizawa does introduce them to the Big Three, and he's properly introduced to Mirio. So, yeah, this episode overall introduces a lot of characters that are prominent and important for the next season. So we're going to be seeing them a little bit more in the coming episodes. But for the most part, I gotta close my door. My dog is whining. But in any case, we're introduced to a bunch of characters that are going to be prominent for the next season. We're not going to be properly introduced to them until then, but they are going to be important for the next season. So this episode overall just introduces us to a bunch of characters that we need to know for the coming season, which is going to be important because it's going to not only be the arc that is going to make or break a lot of people, but it's also going to be where the next movie that just came out a couple of weeks ago is going to fall into place. So, yeah, this episode is going to be very important because it introduces a lot of characters that we need to know. So we need to know who Mirio Togata is and what his quirk is and how it's important to the story. We need to know who Overhaul is and how he plays into the next arc. But overall, this episode just kind of introduces us to a couple of characters that are going to be important. We need to know who these guys are, and this episode does exactly that. It introduces who these guys are and what exactly is going to be going on going forward. So it introduces us to a lot of things that we need to know. But in any case, that's really it. It just introduces us to a bunch of characters that we need to know, while also establishing what exactly the next arc is, which is that they're going to be taking professional hero jobs, except for the people who failed their exams. But tomato, we're going to be seeing a lot of people joining up with professional heroes and doing the hero work legit. So, yeah. If you guys have seen this episode of My Hero Academia, then what did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!